Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating. We've got an incredibly thought-provoking journey ahead of us, unpacking a brief but seriously dense text from July 2023 by an author named Xu Feng. It's called A Brief Introduction to Key Points of Spiritual Thinking. In this explainer, we're going to decode this framework step by step and map out this advanced, highly structured path of spiritual cultivation together. Trust me, it is an incredible journey to unpack, because the imagery and the philosophy here, they are just completely captivating.
But hey, before we get into the weeds here, I want you to really think about something for a second. What actually exists beyond rational thought? We spend our entire lives prizing logic, reason, and rationality. We literally build our entire societies around it. But what happens if consciousness pushes past that boundary? Like, what does a mind actually look like when it operates totally outside the confines of the logical world? That is the abstract, kind of mind-bending territory we are exploring today.
All right, Section 1, Rational versus Spiritual Thinking.
So, starting on the ground floor of this whole ascension arc, we have to look at this fascinating baseline dichotomy Xu Feng sets up right in the very first sentence of the text. Notice how human thought is categorized here, and it's not about demonizing one side or the other. He basically says, look, rational thinking, that's the characteristic of the virtuous, which is a great thing. Being virtuous is a super high ethical standard. But, and here's the kicker, the text outlines a clear hierarchy. It argues that if you really want to reach the ultimate state of existence, to become what it calls celestial, you have to shift entirely away from rational thinking. You've got to adopt spiritual thinking. It's not at all about abandoning goodness. It's about completely transcending the limits of everyday human logic to reach a much higher plane.
Moving right along, Section 2, Keys to Spiritual Ascension.
Okay, let's dive into this. If spiritual thinking is the absolute requirement for the celestial state, how do we actually get there? Well, distilling the text's slightly cryptic numbered list gives us this really elegant roadmap. Think of this as the actual climb up the mountain. First up, we have repentance, which is listed as a strictly necessary condition to sublimate or elevate the quality of your life. Without it, there's no elevation. Simple as that. Then we see manifesting through imagination. Basically, if you picture beauty, you get beauty. Picture ugliness, you get ugliness. We've also got embracing formlessness, breaking attachments to escape the cycle of reincarnation, actively cultivating joy every single day, and finally, just completely surrendering to the Tao, or God.
Now, the absolute hardest part of this climb really boils down to two huge concepts, formlessness and selflessness. In the original text, these are written as Wu Sheng and Wu Wo. The author is super explicit here. Only through formlessness can we see true reality, and only through selflessness can we see our true self. It's fundamentally about letting go of your ego, dropping those material attachments, and breaking free from what the text calls dharma laksana, which is basically the deceptive outward appearance of things. Actually, it's kind of like a trap. The source asserts that getting captivated by these physical forms keeps you stuck on the hamster wheel of samsara, the reincarnation cycle. Breaking through them is literally the only way to, quote, see heaven.
And what's cool is this philosophy isn't just some passive theory, it builds into a very active, lived practice. Step 1 is actively manifesting beauty through your imagination. Step 2 is a daily mandate. You have to choose joy. Think of good things, think of joyful things, and deliberately make yourself happy every single day. Step 3 is total surrender. The text instructs you to hand your life over to God or just let the Tao manage all your life's arrangements. And the intended result of doing all this, you get to live completely without resentment, regret, worry, anxiety, or fear. The text describes this beautifully serene state where the heart just dwells nowhere and your emotions are totally untethered.
Which brings us to Section 3, Breaking the Material Illusion.
All right, so we've got our foundational keys and our daily practices. Now, how do we use them to shatter the ceiling of our perceived reality? The text explicitly defines the absolute core of spiritual thinking as a consciousness that is totally unbound and unrestricted. Unrestricted by what exactly? Well, by the reality of the material world and by the constraints that society puts on us. When you strip away all those societal expectations and material limitations, the text suggests you hit this profoundly carefree state. It is all about enjoying life exactly as you wish and playing with absolute, complete freedom. And that leads us to the summit. Section 4, the supercelestial state.
We have officially arrived at the cosmic peak of this document. We are transitioning from the practices of a cultivating human being to a truly transcendent state of existence. I want you to take a moment and just really absorb the awe-inspiring imagery here. The 3,000 macro worlds are all stages for my entertainment, and the infinite time and space are territories for me to roam freely. Wow, that is the breathtaking perspective of a fully liberated consciousness. The sheer scale is staggering, isn't it? It's no longer about navigating the day-to-day human experience. Instead, the entire universe, infinite time, and infinite space literally become a boundless playground for the mind.
And having this boundless playground leads directly to the brilliant creative power inherent in that state. Listen to this. Lifting a handful of sand, transforming them into thousands of green trees is my petty skill, and creating a beautiful world is my specialty. What a stunning poetic metaphor. The author uses this vivid imagery to explain that a consciousness untethered from material reality isn't just floating aimlessly in the void somewhere. It possesses boundless, effortless creative power. What seems like an impossible miracle to our rational minds, turning sand into a thriving forest, is literally just a petty skill for someone operating purely in spiritual thinking.
So bringing it all together now, everything we've explored today, from releasing the ego and manifesting daily joy to completely surrendering to the Tao and unbinding your consciousness from societal norms, it all makes up what the author refers to as advanced cultivation practices. Let's be real, these aren't just casual self-help tips for a better Monday. According to the source text, these are the essential, hard-won qualities you need to elevate human consciousness into what is termed a super celestial being.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. How bound is your consciousness to the material world? Seriously, as we wrap up this explainer, I invite you to genuinely reflect on your own reality. How much of your thinking is strictly rational, tied entirely to the physical stuff around you, and boxed in by what society tells you is possible? And what might happen if you allowed yourself to explore even a tiny fraction of this spiritual thinking? It is such a wild, deeply fascinating concept to ponder. Thank you so much for exploring Zhifeng's work with me today. Keep questioning the boundaries of your reality, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next explainer.